Immunization Advisory Committee talking about not recommending AstraZeneca for people 65 and older.
Yes. So we have a lot of data at this point when it comes to COVID-19 in regard to all the vaccines. We have two sets of data. The first set of data is the data that we know from all the studies that AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson have produced. Then we have a second set of data for all these vaccinations from real-life data, which is from Israel in the case of Pfizer, from Scotland and England and the rest of Europe in the case of AstraZeneca, for example. And the good news is that both sets of data from real life are actually much more promising than the very promising existing data that we knew already. And so the AstraZeneca vaccine was essentially not tested on anyone over the age of 65, but we know from Scotland and from England that people over the age of 65 are receiving it and are having great success with it. In all reality, at this point here in Canada, I don't think it changes a lot in the picture, because we could absolutely give this vaccine to people who are under the age of 65. It is my full expectation that the vaccine will be safe and effective for people over the age of 65 up to probably 85 or so. But in the meantime, we could use the ones that were cleared, effective, and safe already for over age 65. And then those ones that are under the age of 65, we could certainly deploy the 20 million doses of AstraZeneca that we have. Every time we have a new vaccine, we were talking about, me and you last week, about this issue. Every time we expedite the approval of a vaccine, we're going to see announcements like the one out of BC that says, you know what, we're now 3 months ahead of time. And, look at the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It's already approved in the United States, and I fully expect that it will be approved in Canada. And my question always, why can't we continue to rely with our ally, our best and biggest ally in the United States, to use a lot of the data that allowed them to approve it so we could continue to vaccinate people? I think we will not have a problem with vaccines. We could use AstraZeneca for people under age 65. We could use Pfizer for people who have access to large centers that has, refrigerator that could handle minus 82. We could use Moderna for people in smaller towns. We could use each vaccine for the benefit of its characteristics and move on with this vaccination process.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is we shouldn't blow this story out of proportion. Just because it's not recommended for people 65 and older doesn't mean it won't be when we get more evidence. And as you say, and I just want to report this now as you're talking, the UK government does say a single dose of AstraZeneca reduces the chance of hospitalization by more than 80% in people who are over the age of 80. This is new data, not yet peer-reviewed, but you're saying that in all likelihood, that's the way Canada will go. We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that, for example, we know that the Pfizer vaccine first dose is now out of the study out of 1.2 million people in Israel suggests that maybe 70% effective after first dose. AstraZeneca, we have actually evidence out of Scotland and now out of England that suggests these really, really good numbers. The reality is these first doses are performing much better than we thought. And, we thought they would perform very well, but they're doing much better than what we thought. And it's really important to know, because a lot of people are wondering about which vaccine they should receive. The effectiveness is sometimes misunderstood. 95% effective, it means that it reduces your risk by 95%, which is quite a bit of effectiveness. And so 70%, if I had something that would reduce my risk of being really sick by 70%, that is incredible. And there are not many things in medicine that reduces the risk of any disease by even 50%. So to have 70 and 80 and 95%, this is why science is extremely beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And it's wonderful. And, in the news, and I know in your industry as well, as a doctor, we often look for things, that are causes for concern. But it is important to talk about just how amazing these vaccines are and how well they are working and not to get lost too much in the reads. Your read as well, if I can ask you about what BC has just announced in the last couple of hours. Again, this dramatic move forward in their timeline, saying that it's possible everybody in the province could get the first dose anyway by, mid-July.
Yeah, there's two things to that. Number one, BC is taking a page right out of Quebec's book. where Quebec elected to give first dose to many of its citizens instead of 2 doses for the same person. And now we know that the first dose is actually quite effective. And so BC is trying to replicate that experiment, which I think is a very thoughtful and a good idea. The other thing that, anytime we have an additional 20 million doses of any vaccines, we're going to see vaccines being rolled earlier. It is really important. The difference between July and September is not just 2 months, but there's actually a significant difference between those two, because if we are able to vaccinate a lot of people by the end of the summer, then we potentially may be talking about different return to school plans, different return to university plans, sports activities are going to be potentially different for young folks and whatnot. So yes, 2 months is a big deal, but it's beyond that. It's the fact that we may actually have a substantial change in return to business as usual if we could vaccinate people over the summer and be ready for the fall and school period, which will make a huge, huge difference. This is all very welcome news.